She told me, "I'm with my ex, you've got to accept it." So I packed her things, changed the locks, sent one last message, and watched her ex ghost her while I walked away free. I still remember when my phone buzzed that night. It wasn't just another alert or some silly meme from a group chat. It was that one line that changed everything for me. "I'm with my ex. You've got to accept it." For a second, I really thought it was a joke. Emily had a weird sense of humor sometimes, with little tests that made me laugh. But this wasn't funny. I felt this awful knot in my chest, like a heavy weight had settled on me. We'd been together nearly 2 years. 34, I thought I was on solid footing in life. Everything seemed stable for the future. Hearing that from her turned my world upside down. We met through friends in Chicago, and those early days were full of small, special moments. Coffee on lazy mornings, spontaneous road trips, and holiday gatherings with our families. Those things really counted. I trusted her like you trust someone you believe will always stick around. When she said I was the one, I really believed it. I called her immediately. No answer. I texted to ask where she was, who she was with, and if she meant it. The response came quick. "I told you, I'm with my ex. I'm really not looking for any drama here. Just accept that." The way she said it felt so icy. No regrets, no hesitations. Just a demand for me to shove my feelings aside. I went over her message again, and suddenly, it was like everything around me went mute. A flood of questions hit me. Why was she acting so nonchalant about it? Why bring it up if it wasn't a big deal? We had talked about Jake before. She'd always said their breakup was messy, that there were still texts and check-ins. She made it sound like it was unfinished business, nothing to stress over. I went along with that because she told me I was different, that we were creating something real together. I believed her. That night, I walked back and forth, trying to figure out how to have a calm chat when she replied. But the image of her with Jake kept sneaking into my mind. It felt embarrassing, like something personal had been laid bare. When she finally answered, her voice was steady. "Look," she said, "Jake and I have a history. We're just catching up. If you love me, you'll trust me and just accept it." The logic in her tone hurt the most. She made me feel like I was overreacting for having feelings about this. I asked her straight up, "Are you choosing him over me?" She sighed and told me not to cause a scene and that I was overreacting. That sigh felt like a barrier between us. Confusion morphed into something much colder. I couldn't get to sleep. I kept replaying the call in my head, searching for some line that might help fix things. Instead, I found myself ruminating on every time she'd mentioned Jake. Each memory that used to feel trivial suddenly looked so different. By the morning, she texted me a bright good morning, as if the night before hadn't even happened. That's when I realized this wasn't just a little mistake. It was about how we valued each other and what I was ready to accept. It also made it clear that the gap between what she saw as private and what really mattered to me was much wider than I thought. I sat with those thoughts for a bit and knew I had to consider what boundaries I needed to set. This was the beginning of figuring out what I truly deserved. I understood that this choice would affect us, maybe even change the path I thought I was on. I just sat back and let things play out. When Emily finally picked up my call that night, it felt like she was reading from a script. She sounded so calm. Almost too calm. "Listen, I'm not doing anything wrong. Jake and I have a history. We're just hanging out and you need to be mature about it. If you love me, you'll trust me and accept it." That word accept didn't come off as a request. It felt more like a command. It wasn't merely the fact that she was with him, but how she said it, almost like I was being unreasonable for caring. It was as if trust meant I should ignore any lines that had been crossed and act like everything was fine. I finally asked the question that was eating at me. "So, you're choosing him over me?" She sighed again, that tired sigh people do when they've been repeating themselves too much. "Don't blow this out of proportion. It's just spending time with someone important to me. If you can't deal with that, maybe you're not the guy I thought you were." Her words stung more than a text ever could. It wasn't just about Jake. It was how she saw me. Like my discomfort showed I wasn't tough enough. Like my feelings were more of an issue than her decision. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. I was just sitting on my couch in the dark, my phone silent next to me, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I kept replaying every promise she'd ever made. You don't have to worry about Jake. He's in the past. You're the one I want now. All those moments now felt like lines from a play. Words I had memorized, but that didn't seem real anymore. The irony hit hard. While she was out with him, I was at home, wide awake, left wondering how I had ended up as the villain in her story. Morning rolled around, and I got another text. Good morning. No mention of last night. No hint of any conflict. Just a bubbly message that made it seem like we were still that couple who shared breakfast and plotted weekend adventures. But seeing that text made me feel less like a partner and more like a backup plan she could reset whenever she wanted. I stared at it forever, feeling torn. Part of me wanted to reply, to ask why she thought everything could just go back to normal with a few cheerful words and an emoji. But another part, the part that had spent hours battling her words in my head, realized this was a crucial moment for me. It wasn't just about maturity or trust or even about Jake. It was about how much disrespect I was willing to take. That's when my anger started shifting into something clearer. Not rage, not yelling, but a quiet realization that the relationship I believed we had was not the one we were actually living. And with that came the first step toward an ending. After that good morning text, I was glued to my phone. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, itching to respond. I wanted to ask why she thought she could just hit rewind after a night like that. But I talked myself out of it. I'd spent all night replaying her words, and deep down, I knew I had to set a boundary. So I stayed silent. Instead, I opened my laptop and went through everything we had built together. The joint account for trips, the lease with my name first, the passwords for Netflix, Amazon, all those little things that tie people together. For the first time, it felt risky, as if I'd been handing her keys to a house she was already planning to leave. By evening, she showed up at my place like nothing was wrong. She tossed her bag on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and started chatting about her day. I could barely follow along. My mind was stuck on one thing. This was the same person who told me to be fine with her being with another guy. I let her ramble for a minute before saying gently, "We need to talk about last night." Her smile faded a little. Then she rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, are we really doing this again? I told you Jake and I are just friends. You're making a big deal out of nothing." And there it was, her defense. Nothing about my feelings or our trust. Just me being dramatic. I didn't raise my voice or argue. I simply stood up, grabbed an empty box from the closet, and started packing her things. Her favorite sweater that always ended up on my chair. The stack of books on my shelf. The toothbrush in my bathroom. One by one, they went in. She froze for a second, then her tone sharpened. "Wait, what are you doing?" I didn't stop. "I'm returning your stuff," I said flatly. "You want your ex? Fine, but you can't have me too." Her eyes followed me as I moved back and forth, filling the box. I didn't yell, didn't explain myself. At that moment, there was nothing left to say. It wasn't a dramatic outburst. It was a choice. My choice. That's when her cool demeanor cracked. She put her hands on her hips and tried to twist things around. "Babe, don't be dramatic. I never said I wanted him over you. I just want both of you in my life." And there it was, the truth right out in the open. She wasn't choosing. She wanted me as her safety net while she dipped back into her past. I paused, looked at her and said calmly, "I'm not about to be a plan B. Take your stuff and figure out what you really want. Just don't expect me to hang around waiting." Her expression shifted quickly, from disbelief to anger to tears. She tried everything. Accused me of being insecure. Said I was throwing away something good. Raised her voice, thinking that would scare me into backing down. But the box was already in her hands, and I had the lock change appointment lined up. I didn't match her intensity. I just kept reminding myself that this is what self-respect looks like. Later that night, after she left, I sat on my bed and typed out one last text. I kept it short. What more was there to say? "You told me to accept you being with your ex. I did. That's why I'm done." I hit send and then blocked her number. The silence that followed was heavy but somehow also peaceful. A kind of calm I hadn't felt in months. It hurt, sure, but it was my hurt. For a few days, it felt like I could finally breathe again. But like I expected, Emily didn't just fade away. About a week later, a mutual friend called. "Hey, just so you know," they said, "Emily's been posting all over social media about how you abandoned her, how men can't handle a strong woman." Of course she had. Posting cryptic quotes, sad selfies, spinning a tale where I was the heartless boyfriend who left for no reason. But here's what I know about lies. They eventually trip over the truth. And that truth caught up with her sooner than I thought. While Emily was busy playing the victim online, Jake wasn't playing along. Word started spreading through our friends. He wasn't interested in anything more. They hung out for a few nights, probably just reminiscing, and then he cut ties. So there she was, left with nothing but her own words and screenshots she couldn't erase. And the kicker? Some of the same folks she tried to convince that I was the bad guy had already seen the proof. I didn't have to defend myself. Screenshots of her texts. "I'm with my ex. You need to accept it," circulated enough to tell their own story. The friends who had jumped in to defend her stopped. A few even reached out to me discreetly, saying they admired how I walked away without airing all the dirty laundry. A few months later, I bumped into her by chance at a cafe downtown. She looked different, worn out in a way I hadn't seen before. When our eyes met, she gave a small, awkward smile, almost like she was testing the waters to see if I'd let her back in. But all I felt was relief, freedom. I gave a polite nod, paid for my coffee, and walked out without saying another word. That was the end of it. Just the quiet strength of stepping away when someone shows you their true colors. Emily wanted me to accept her disrespect. Instead, I chose to accept my own worth. And honestly, that's what I hold on to now. Not the anger, not the sleepless nights, but the fact that I drew a line and stood my ground. Thanks for staying with me until the end. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more stories.